this disease will take your life. It almost took mine a couple times. And it's devastating what alcohol and drugs can do to you physically and mentally. We all have choices. I can make this choice and go right back to where I was, or I can make this choice and be sober so I don't have to go back to that place where I was. And I made that choice to be sober. For me, it's life or death.
You or a loved one is facing mental health challenges or addiction. Remember, you're not alone. Jackson House can help. Hold on to hope and take the first step towards transformation.
My name's Jake, and I am an alcoholic and an addict. I've been drinking since I was about 14. And then when I got into high school, those drinks started going a little more, going to house parties, and then I turned 21 and I started going to dive bars, and I figured out those things. I like dive bars, that was like my safety, dive bars. So that's where I'd go if I was mad, sad, or just wanted to be alone, kept going to that. And then I was 24, I had my daughter, and then a year later, I lost her. I went on a fishing trip, and I got really seasick. And when I got back home, I was watching my daughter, and I had rolled over and suffocated her when we were taking a nap. And that physically and mentally destroyed me. So that increased my drinking and drug abuse tenfold. So for the past, this coming July will be 7 years. It's tattooed on my arm. It'll be 7 years since I lost her. But then last year, like I said, it was increasing my drug abuse. My mental, everything was just completely messed up. I was going off the rails. And then last year in September, I was in my buddy's house, and he went in the bathroom and committed suicide. So I had to face that too. And I have a lot of stuff from my childhood. My dad was a Navy SEAL, physically beat me when I was up at his house. But down here, my life was down here. And my mom, my dad, my brother, everyone was down here. We go to the desert, family, just all the family events and all that. But after everything like that happened, after that September through October, I was just a mess, and it led 2 days before I went to API. I had my gun in my head, and I just didn't want to live anymore. But once I actually called Kaiser Point Loma, I called him from the bar. I had my last drink, my last shot, and my last drug. I was in Kaiser Point Loma the next day, and I was in API, detoxing for 6 days.
So you were really going through the struggle. It sounds like, one part of you was trying to take your life, while there was another, probably quiet part of you that you have to live.
Yeah.
Yeah. But back to your daughter, you mentioned you were seasick, was drinking or drugs at that time, any component of maybe what?
It was the night before. I was up at the bar, I was drinking, and I was tired, and then went out and got really seasick. And then, and then everything came together. When all that happened, there was like 9 cop cars, 2 fire trucks, ambulances. I was in handcuffs. They took my blood. For 4 hours, I was laying on the cold concrete. Everyone got to go to the hospital, but where was Jake? He's still on the concrete. And then the cop comes up, says, your daughter passed away, and that I still have flashbacks of it, but it really, really messed me up.
I mean, you already have explained 2 very tragic incidents that you have been right there to witness. How do you overcome that mental?
Well, with sobriety. With my sobriety now, excuse me, like 4 months and 26 days sober. And it's a lot easier to handle things like this.
Tell me why that
sober.
is.
Because I have a clear head, and I'm not looking to the bottle. I'm not looking to a bag of cocaine, because I used to use that to forget, and numb myself. You know, that it only lasts so long, and then you got to wake up eventually and start drinking again because it was over and over and over again. You know, I was missing work. I was, I lost friends, and it just I lost everything. You know, my family, my parents, they tried. My mom, my dad, they wanted to help me, but I'm very hard headed, very stubborn, and they they uh they couldn't do anything because I basically told everybody to fuck off.
When you talk about being sober and having to be clear minded, um, to me that says that you actually had to face the things that you were experiencing and feeling. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you were able to do that? Because somebody listening might think, I don't want to feel, I don't want to.
Yeah. Um, Getting it out and talking to somebody. You know, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I held it all in. And I can tell you it's the worst thing you can do because that's what led to the gun in my head. But how I do it now is I just talk to people. You know, I go to a lot of meetings and I express myself in those meetings, and that helps me get stuff off my chest. You know, and that has helped me a lot. And definitely going through Jackson House, I stayed there for 6 weeks, and my counselor, everybody there, I got along with, and I honestly had a blast. You know, and everyone, there were a lot of good people, just a lot of clients in there that helped me out too. You know, just you form like a little family in there, and it makes the ease. It doesn't even feel like rehab. It does, you know. I mean, we go for our walks. You do things, and you stay busy and keep your mind off of it. And then when you get out, that's what the real challenge is. When you get out of that place, you know, you're back into the real world. You got a liquor store literally right behind the house. I could have left there and walked right around 7-Eleven and got loaded. But my dad picked me up and we went straight to a meeting. And that's what I needed. And then I stayed with them for a couple weeks. And during Christmas time, I got out December 12th. And when I got out, it was scary, but I was ready. And I wanted to stay there for that extra 2 weeks because I was a loose cannon and I didn't trust myself. So I stayed those extra 2 weeks just to make sure I was going to be okay.
Yeah, not everybody has the wherewithal to do that. And I think that sets somebody apart who's really serious about their recovery, versus, you know, somebody that maybe isn't. And, you know, I know that, you know, people come back to Jeff's house and there's no shame in that. And you reach a different point where you just know that you're ready to keep going. So there's two things I want to ask you. You mentioned about Jackson House kind of being a blast. What things stick out in your mind about it being? I know that it didn't feel like rehab. I know you mentioned going on walks, but what sticks out in your mind about it?
I mean, you know, waking up in the morning, just waking up sober. That was probably the biggest blessing to start the day off because I haven't woken up sober in about 15 years. You know, it's, and that the fun things we would do in there, you know, we do those Jeopardy games. We would, they have the meditation guy comes along. You got to put the rock on your forehead. I thought it was hilarious. Some people are like, I feel it, man. I'm like, but you know, it was nice. So I just sat outside and just got some fresh air. And there, you know, on the weekends, I would grill. They would put me in charge of grilling on Sundays, 100 hot dogs or whatever. And that's what I like to do. I like to cook. Yeah. And that's one thing I do at home because it's very therapeutic. Cooking is. But I could tell people if they're scared to go. I was very scared. When I got to that house, I had my tail between my legs. I didn't look like this guy you're talking to today. I was very down. I was below the bedrock. I was beat down. And slowly but surely it took a couple weeks to get used to the house, figure out stuff and start, because I get shy around new people and I start feeling everything out. Then I'm goofy. I'm feeling myself getting it. Yeah, you know. And the people that were in, like I said, the people that were in there, you form that little family, and that's what help it not feel so much like rehab. Because you see these people, you're with these people 24/7. You know, some of them you're sleeping 5 feet away from. You know, The guys I had in my room were hilarious. Um, but you- people aren't really going to get along. Sometimes it's not my chore. You do that. Just do it, man. You're only there for 28 days, but you're there to work on yourself. And I was working on myself every day. I got a sponsor while I was there. I started working the steps with my sponsor. He would come to the house, and do you see that some people didn't do that? And they would just blow the counselors off. Like, they're here to help you. What are you doing? You're there to help. You're getting help. This place is either going to make or break me, because I'm either going to get out of here happy and be sober for the rest of my life, or I'm going to go out and go right back down that same road where I was.
Why don't you want to go back to that?
Because I like my life. I like to be alive, because I don't want to go back where I was. For me, it's life or death. And where I was before Jackson House, I didn't want to live. But now I have a whole new perspective of life. I'm going back to work next week. Things just keep falling in my place for me that I don't really ask for. But I did ask for the job, because I told them, I let them know and I'm ready to come back to work. But, yeah, like I said, when you leave that place, you have a decision. We all have choices. I can make this choice and go right back to where I was, or I can make this choice and be sober so I don't have to go back to that place where I was. And I made that choice to be sober because I didn't want to go back there. And to answer your question, if I were to leave that house, I probably wouldn't be sitting right here talking to you today, because that's how intense I was in my addiction and my mental thoughts.
So, you kind of started to touch on this too. What do you do now to overcome trials, temptations?
I keep a structure. I structure my days out. I plan days with people, or just to keep out of isolation, because I live out in Descanso on a mountain, and that's where my addiction grew, because I isolated a lot. But I started doing Muay Thai. That's the shirt I'm wearing. I started doing Muay Thai. I train 4 or 5 days a week. And I sponsor. I have a lot of sponsees. I sponsor 4 guys from the Jackson House and 3 from the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I have 7 sponsees right now. And every day, one of them calls me with something, and that keeps me sober. Because I can't let these guys down. I have to be there for them. And that helps keep me sober. And on top of everything else, I go to a lot of meetings. I'm not, like I said, I haven't been working that 3 months. I've been out of Jackson House. I've been going to meetings every day. I did my IOP. We'll get into that. But, those commitments I'm a donut guy for a Saturday morning men's meeting. I have a 9:30 secretary position. I run a meeting on Sundays. And now I'm kind of learning out my schedule when I go back to work. I'm still going to be able to do these things. But I would also put in the extra work if I didn't have to wake up early the next day. I had H&I panels, and I would hit every single H&I panel that I could. I've gone back to Jackson House twice and done 2 H&I panels there, and I've made people cry. I don't, you guys better grab your tissues, because I'm going to tell you the real shit, of how it is. This disease will take your life. It almost took mine a couple times. And it's devastating what alcohol and drugs can do to you physically and mentally. I gained 40 pounds at Jackson House. Don't worry, they feed you good. The cook's very good if you go to the Golden Hill. But just the time and effort that my dad told me, if you put in the effort into your sobriety that you put in to alcohol and drugs, you're going to be just fine. And that's what I've done. I go above and beyond in my sobriety. Sobriety is my new addiction. And sometimes we go to meetings and people are like, Jake, leave some AA for the rest of us, because I'm very involved. I love it. And 5 months ago, I was terrified to go to an AA meeting, but now I'm all about it. I absolutely love it. But that's just me.
What gave you the courage to be that person to take the lead, show up, bring the donuts? If somebody's not participating that you step in and be the one to participate? Is that just how you were as a person?
That's kind of how I am as a person. Like, I want to be that guy. You know, I always grew up, my dad being a superintendent at where I was working, and I was like, I want to do that one day. But if someone, like, if the donut guy couldn't do it anymore, I was like, I'll do it. I'll buy donuts. And you make that commitment, and it keeps you in a straight line because you made a commitment and you got to do it.
Well, and I think that also plays into your success, because you're showing up, you're accountable to other people to bring the donuts or be there to speak or be there to lead. And so you
suit up and show up.
And you're actively also participating in the alumni program at Jackson
Yes.
House?
Yep. I don't think I've missed one. Well, on the back of the gold coin, it says community. You got to keep a community. And that's one thing that Jackson House gave me, was a community, because I could walk down to Jackson House and most people I hung out with were alcoholics and drug addicts. So I didn't really have friends, but I left Jackson House with friends, and I still talk to them to this day. Alumni. Every Wednesday, it's something I can look forward to because I like going, and I just enjoy seeing the people and hear and seeing the newcomer. The newcomer is also, it keeps me sober because I get to look back and see a reflection of myself, how beat down they are. And it's nice to see them if they get 30-day chips, I'm stoked for them, because at 30, I didn't think I was going to make 30. I couldn't stay sober for a day, and some people have that problem where they can't get sober, but you just got to look to the brighter side of life and just, and then, like I said, I look forward to, because I know it's going to happen. We go there on Wednesdays, and then every other week we have that park meeting. I'm at that park an hour early, just chilling on my blanket, listening to the birds, looking at the fat squirrels running around. It's a beautiful park. But yeah, the alumni is great. Melissa had organized a bonfire up at Oceanside. I brought a bunch of wood. We were up there hanging out for 4 hours. I can leave something now sober, because if in my past, if there was a bonfire, I would have been hammered.
Somebody who wants to be in your position right now, and they can't even imagine being at an event sober. Like, what have you done to replace that? Obviously, like connection and talking to people, or what has been the beauty of being at an event sober?
The beauty of it is I can remember it. That's the beauty part of it. I used to go to concerts, wake up in my bed, not even remember who was playing in the concert. But now, if I go to any event, it's awesome. And how I do it is I see people drinking. When I see people drinking, I see how I was, because I was the one hanging on people, just an ugly drunk. But that just reflects back to me of not wanting to do it because of the whole thought process. I'm not going back down that drain I crawled out of. It was terrible, and being sober, like I said, I haven't been sober since I was 14. So it's like I entered into a new life. I'm seeing things that I haven't seen before. Even while I'm driving, sometimes I'll be looking at trees or the clouds and I'll forget to pay attention that I'm driving, and my coordination for Muay Thai and all that, I'm doing things I never thought I was able to do before. And that's one reason why I can't wait to get back to work. I know it's work, but I work construction. I'm a union glazer. I hang off the side of buildings for a living. And I was doing that in my addiction and I hated it. But now, I also weld too. And I have a passion for welding. I can take a piece of metal and turn it into a rose. I can do stuff like that because I have the ability to do that. And that's what I did before my addiction. And I even appreciate, even out of my house, just laying in my hammock for 3 hours, drooling on myself, It's just a blessing just to be alive.
So what would you say to that person that was holding the gun to their head?
There's a better side. I know it might seem like your world comes to an end. I honestly didn't want to find help. That's why I looked to the gun. I was looking for an easy way out. But then I thought, well, what would it have done to my family? If I were to take my life, it would have been very selfish of me. I I can't explain the pain that anybody that goes through that wants to shoot themselves. But it's a very dark place. And to the person still out there suffering, it does get better. Trust me, it does. You just got to give people a shot. You know, I did my first, I told my story on my podcast about my story and all that. Of how I used to think that rehabs or mental institutions can't help you because they just give you pills, or like that movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, you know, and something like that where you just get all loopy and weird. I totally thought that, but Jackson House 180 my life, and I can't thank that place enough because they saved my life. Not only the work I put in for myself, but Jackson House saved my life. They did.
Not only your life, but look at the impact. Look at the impact that it had now on the lives of others, and these other people that are counting on you and looking to you. You know, you're a few steps ahead of them, and they wouldn't have you had you made that bad decision some months ago.
Yeah.
If somebody else is listening and they're dealing with loss, and it's not just loss, I would imagine you had an incredible amount of guilt that you were dealing with. How did you work through that? How do you continue?
A lot of guilt, a lot of anger, you know, because I thought I was a murderer. You know, I basically rolled over and suffocated my own daughter, and I felt like the biggest piece of shit in the world. So I took my mom's granddaughter, and I can't see my daughter walk down the aisle. I'm never going to see her again, but one day I will. But how I deal with that to this day, you know, just whatever you're going through, you're going to think about it, and you got to make the best out of it. You know, if you have one of those flashbacks and you're driving, what I do is I pull over, and then, you know, I'll just go find somewhere to walk. If I'm at my house and I'm having a bad day, I go to the beach. I be around people. Like I said, I love being around people. And if I see some kids running around or people getting blasted by a wave, and that just makes me laugh. You know, you got to find happiness and you got to laugh.
Yeah.
Laughter is medicine. And she knows I'm always laughing. You know, people are sharing something, I'm laughing at the stupidest thing, you know, but yes, I have a lot of guilt and anger. Has that all gone away? No. That's something I'm going to live with for the rest of my life, but it's up to me to make the best of it.
Yep. And I would just echo that with, you could wallow in the guilt, or you could do them proud. and you mentioned your friend as well, and honor them by honoring your life.
Yeah. And the rewards that I get is helping these people through what they're dealing with. Because I've dealt with so much. Some people won't deal with what I've dealt with. You know, they end up taking their lives. But I'm here telling you the story of how you can change someone else's life by the fuck ups you made in your life, you know. And you know, if I couldn't imagine myself relapsing. Like I said, my sponsees, they help keep me sober. That's the biggest part why I do it.
Yeah, and you also mentioned, you know, you started your own podcast.
Yes. It's on Spotify. It's called Bright Sobriety. And you know what? And I also, I found God, found a higher power. And that's an important thing. Because if you're a dry drunk and you don't work any program, you know, AA, NA, anything. The reason I love AA is because it's structured. And what I needed was structure. And that's how I live my life every day. And my sponsor, I didn't really want to put in the work to the fourth step until you actually do all your inventory, resentments, people you've harmed, your fears, any of that. Because I was going to have to go make amends, you know. But I ended up working through it, and I made those amends. And that lifted an incredible amount, an elephant's foot off my chest, to where I could breathe again. And that's one thing that I loved about AA is because you find all those character defects and you find that inventory that you've had in the back of your head for years, that I've never thought of. And my sponsor knows my story, and that's why he called me on my bullshit. And that's why it's my job to call my sponsees on their bullshit, to help them work through it. Some of them have a hard time with it. And I'm like, dude, you just got to do it.
Well, I am sitting across from you right now and just thinking to myself how amazing you are and what, testimony that you have. And I think somebody listening out there that feels they've gone through the worst of the worst, you can speak to that and you can speak to their words about that too. It's a blessing to be able to do that and help other people. So let me ask in closing, maybe just if you were to look at the camera and there's somebody on the other side that is where you were some months ago and feel like life is hopeless and not worth living, what would you want to tell them?
I know it's hard. You don't want to reach out, but you got to reach out. That's the only way you're going to make your life better is if you reach out anywhere. I know if you go to the emergency room, I tried it. They will just shove you right out the door. You actually got to put in some work to find the help. And just if you can get sober and at least get a day under your belt, it'll make it a lot easier. Because when you're hammered and trying to look for people and trying to find help, you're going to tell them some other name or you're going to, it's not a good idea. But I can tell you is there is help and there is wonderful help. Jackson House will be glad to have you. And like I said, I owe Jackson House everything. And life does get better. I'm only 4 months, almost 5 months into my recovery, and I'm enjoying every single day I wake up sober. Enjoying it. I wish I would have done this a long time ago. Here I am sitting today, alive, sober, and happy. Because happiness for me is key. I lived for the past 15 years, angry, pissed off at the world. You cut me off, my hand's out the window. The smallest little things used to piss me off, but now it's like, whatever, dude. I got other things to do. You can walk out the front door happy and not scared of the world, because I was scared of the world. But yeah, that elephant's foot I was talking about lifted off my chest where I could breathe again, like you were talking about earlier, just that guilt, the shame, the anger. And that's one reason why I wanted to take my life. Because I didn't think anybody wanted me here anymore. Because that was my thought process. That was the drugs and the alcohol. Once I got sober and started working a program, and I was able to talk about what had happened to me, it's I'm an open book. You can ask me a question and I will tell you the truth. And it's just been beautiful.
If you or someone you know is on the fence about treatment, we would love to walk through your concerns with you. We offer a free, confidential consultation where we can better understand your needs and walk you through the details of treatment. Reach out today so we can learn how we can best support you. 888-255-9280 or visit us at jacksonhousecares.com.